Welcome back to another chilling episode, my fellow night owls. Tonight, we delve into the darkest corners of the human experience where fear takes hold and the line between reality and nightmare blurs. We dive into 3 terrifying true stories sent in by our viewers, tales that will send shivers down your spine. These are not stories for the faint of heart, but for those who dare to confront the unknown. These are their real-life experiences working the night shift. The time when the rest of the world sleeps and shadows dance in the flickering light of a lone monitor, when the only sound is the hum of machinery and the beating of your own heart.
Our first story takes us to the desolate outskirts of a nameless city, where a lone security guard named David found himself facing the unexplainable. It was a night like any other, the air thick with humidity, and the silence broken only by the distant bark of a dog. David, a seasoned guard with years of experience, patrolled the grounds of an abandoned factory, its rusted gates a haunting reminder of its former glory. The factory had a reputation, whispered tales among the locals of strange occurrences and unexplained noises. David, a man of logic and reason, always dismissed them as mere superstition. Tonight, however, his skepticism would be put to the test. As he rounded the corner of the main building, his flashlight beam caught a flicker of movement in one of the shattered windows. His pulse quickened, his hand instinctively reaching for the heavy maglite at his side. "Hello? Security!" His voice echoed through the empty courtyard. There was no answer, only the rustling of leaves in the night breeze. He slowly approached the building, his senses on high alert. The broken window gaped like an empty eye socket, inviting him into the darkness within. With a deep breath, David stepped through the shattered frame, shards of glass crunching under his boots. The air inside was stagnant and heavy, thick with the smell of decay and dust. His flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing a scene of utter desolation. Rusted machinery loomed in the darkness, skeletal remnants of a once thriving industry. As he ventured deeper into the building, a sense of unease settled over him. It wasn't a sound or a sight, but a feeling, a prickling at the back of his neck that sent a shiver down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Then he saw it. At the far end of the vast factory floor, a shadowy figure stood motionless, its back to him. It was tall and slender, its form indistinct in the dim light. David froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice strained with tension. The figure didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge his presence. It simply stood there, shrouded in darkness. But as he drew closer, the figure seemed to melt away, dissolving into the shadows as if it had never been there at all. He reached the spot where he had seen the figure, his breath ragged, his heart pounding against his ribs. But there was nothing there. The chilling certainty of it settled over him like a shroud.
Our next tale takes us from the desolate landscapes of industrial decay to the sterile, brightly lit halls of Mercy Hospital, where a young nurse named Sarah would face a night of unimaginable terror. Sarah, new to the night shift, was filled with the idealistic energy of someone eager to make a difference. She saw her work as more than just a job, it was a calling. The hospital, usually a hive of activity during the day, took on a different character at night. The constant bustle was replaced by an unsettling quietude, punctuated by the occasional beeping of machines and the hushed whispers of the skeletal staff. The long, sterile corridors, bathed in the cold, clinical glow of fluorescent lights, seemed to stretch on forever. On this particular night, Sarah found herself assigned to the 3rd floor, a ward reserved for long-term care patients. It was considered a quiet assignment, predictable, almost boring. Tonight, however, the mundane would give way to the horrific. Her rounds brought her to room 312, occupied by Mr. Henderson, an elderly man who had been in a coma for the past 6 months. Mr. Henderson, she had been told, was as harmless as he was unresponsive. He lay still as death in his bed, his chest rising and falling with the rhythmic rasp of the respirator. As Sarah performed her routine checks, adjusting his IV drip and noting his vitals, she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. It wasn't the temperature. The room was kept at a comfortable 72 degrees. It was something else, an almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere, a subtle change in the air pressure that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. Suddenly, Mr. Henderson's eyes snapped open, wide and wild, burning with an unnatural intensity that sent a jolt of fear through Sarah's veins. His gaze was not that of a confused, disoriented patient waking from a coma, but something else, something ancient and malevolent. "He's coming," Mr. Henderson rasped, his voice a guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the depths of his being. "He's coming for you." Sarah stumbled back, her heart pounding against her ribs. The man's words were nonsensical, the ramblings of a delirious mind, she told herself. But the sheer terror in his eyes, the way he seemed to look right through her, sent a chill down her spine that no amount of logical reasoning could dispel. Mr. Henderson, his frail body racked with a sudden, inexplicable strength, ripped the IV from his arm, spraying blood across the sterile white sheets. Sarah watched in horror as the once feeble man sat up in bed, his eyes blazing with unholy light. "He wants you," he shrieked, his voice no longer his own, but a chorus of voices, twisted and distorted, echoing through the room. "He wants you to join him in the darkness." Sarah, paralyzed with fear, could only watch as Mr. Henderson, his face contorted in a grotesque parody of a smile, lunged at her, his skeletal fingers reaching for her throat. His touch, cold as ice, sent a shockwave through her body. She screamed, a primal shriek of terror that echoed down the empty hallway. She struggled against the impossible strength of the possessed man, her mind rebelling against the horrifying reality unfolding before her.
Just when she thought all hope was lost, the door to the room burst open, and 2 orderlies, alerted by her screams, rushed in. They pulled Mr. Henderson off her, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. Sarah, trembling and covered in blood, stumbled back, her eyes never leaving the terrifying figure of Mr. Henderson as the orderlies restrained him. "He's coming," he repeated, his voice laced with malice.
Our final tale of terror takes us from the sterile halls of Mercy Hospital to the brightly lit aisles of a 24-hour convenience store on the edge of town. Here, amidst the shelves stocked with junk food and the whirring of the slushy machine, a young store clerk named Mark would face his own brush with evil.
Mark, a college student working the graveyard shift to make ends meet, was used to the solitude of the night. He found a strange comfort in the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights, the rhythmic beeping of the gas pumps, and the occasional rumble of a passing truck breaking the silence. He'd come to see the store as his own personal nocturnal kingdom, a place where he could escape the pressures of school and the banality of everyday life.
Tonight, however, the predictable rhythm of his shift would be shattered. It was a little after 2 a.m, the witching hour, when a beat-up sedan rolled into the deserted parking lot. Mark watched on the security monitor as the car, its headlights cutting through the darkness, came to a stop near the gas pumps. A figure emerged from the driver's seat, his face obscured by the shadow of a hooded sweatshirt.
Mark, his senses dulled by the monotony of the night, didn't think much of it at first. He assumed it was just another insomniac in search of cigarettes or a late-night snack. He continued stocking shelves, the rhythmic clinking of glass bottles a soothing counterpoint to the silence of the night. A few minutes later, the bell above the door chimed, announcing the arrival of a customer. Mark looked up, expecting to see the man from the sedan.
Instead, he was greeted by a figure that sent a chill down his spine. The man who stood before him was tall and imposing, his face hidden behind a grotesque grinning mask. He wore a heavy leather jacket despite the summer heat, and his hands, which were covered in what looked like crude homemade tattoos, jingled nervously at his sides.
"Just the essentials, buddy," the man growled, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "Cash register now." Mark, his mind struggling to process the reality of the situation, could only stare at the man in disbelief. This had to be a joke, a prank by some of his friends, he told himself. But the look in the man's eyes, the cold, calculating glint that shone through the eye holes of the mask, told him otherwise.
The man, sensing Mark's hesitation, reached into his jacket and pulled out a rusty hunting knife, its blade glinting ominously in the fluorescent light. "Don't make me ask twice," he snarled, his voice tight with menace. Mark, his heart pounding in his chest, knew he had to act fast.
Thank you for watching. If you have your own night shift horror story, share it in the comments below. Your experience could be the next chilling tale that keeps our viewers up at night. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. We have a whole library of nightmares waiting to be unleashed, and your subscription helps us share them with the world. Stay safe, and remember, the night shift can be more than just a job. It can be a gateway to terror, a descent into the darkest corners of human experience. Until next time, sleep tight, and try not to let the darkness consume you.